Hi, Marc Warnke here with PackGoats.com. Hey, I'm standing among a couple of, these guys are 8 months-ish. They're all starting, they've all been cut. This guy was castrated early. This guy was a breeder. You know, they're in that 120-ish pound range, 130 pound range. They're getting ready to put on their spring weight, and you know, they're just going to get a whole lot bigger. I'm noticing that what's happening right now is the pecking order is getting really aggressive between these 5 juveniles that I'm raising right now, and as a result they can get really confused, and this is a critical time where if you see any aggression that you really need to correct that. Dingle here is about one of the sweetest guys on the planet. He immediately wags his tail when he's pet. He loves it. This morning I let him out of the pen. He was feeling kind of frisky, horns this guy, horns that guy, and then looks at dad and gives him a little nudge, and so immediately bam, he's on his back. And you know, big verbal no's, really clear, you don't do that, I don't play with you that way. And I brought up 2 really important things. He is what I call he's a heady goat, meaning he likes to communicate with his head. So I'm never gonna give him the pleasure of communicating with me with his head. Very often I'll be petting like this and he'll bring his head around like, hey, I want you to talk to me up here. When I communicate with only his body, it helps me to not have to deal with it. So I'm communicating with him. This part of your body is never where I touch you. It's never where I give love with you. And so he's a goat that I'm going to want to really focus on and watch his temperament. And if I see him slightly make a gesture, I'm going to arrest with a really loud no, because now he has that no sound associated with the flip that he just got. And I want to reassert that. So I'll say no, and then pet him and love him up over here, right? So see how he keeps coming back with his head? He really wants me to speak to him with his head. And so I'm just letting him clearly know that's not where he and I engage one another. The other thing that I want to bring up about this age and in general, it's so critical that I made a mistake in early. I had aggressive goats early in my pack goating career and early in goats because I was so active with my goats. I would run around in the pen, they would play, and everybody would do things. I don't believe goats can distinguish between playing and aggression, and fighting and communicating with horns are very, very close things for them. When they play, it's a kind of a fun form of aggression. Full on, really legitimate battles only happen every now and then, but it's a constant part of play to see who's kind of not interested, who's interested. So then if you engage with them in that play mechanism, you're too close to aggression. I believe it's super confusing for them. They're like, hey, we played just a little bit ago, I threw my horns and now you don't want to do that. I'm confused. So I heavily discourage you from ever really playing with your goats because they can't distinguish. It's communicating them too close to that aggressive piece. We're now getting into that activity that might lend them to think that they can play with us in that way, in the same way they play with one another, because they don't always just play jumping around. They do that too, and that's fun, but they'll always, as you know, run around and then crack, 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 and they think if you're doing the first part, you should be doing the second part too. What's the matter? So I heavily advise don't play. I heavily advise arresting this sort of behavior. See how he steps towards me? So I'm going to push him to the side and say no, and then I'm going to give him love, right? So did you see how he quit wagging his tail when I said no? He thought this was cool. This is how I should approach dad. Wagging of his tail, no. Push him away, then give him love, and he wags again. So now he's learning. See how he keeps wanting to come back with his head? So this is one of those goats, and not everybody does that. This is one of those goats that thinks it's okay to communicate with me in that way, and I'm going to work hard to teach him that's not how we do it. We get love at the back end. We don't ever get it at the front end, and I'm not going to communicate with you up there. So another helpful hint, bear in mind all this information is in the Pack Goat 101 course. It's also in the Raising Babies. The courses are how you're going to learn everything that you need to know about running these things. These are just kind of little intermittent helpful tips, things that come along when I'm out here working. I think, man, people really need to know this, but we put it all in an organized fashion in the courses. And then too, if you like these videos, make sure you subscribe and that you comment and share them. I think the information that we have here is really valuable for all the new goat owners in the world, and hope you find that helpful. Marc Warnke.